بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والعاقبة للمتقين ولا عدوان إلا على الظالمين وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له ولي المتقين وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله صلى الله عليه وسلم تسليما كثيرا أما بعد. As promised, brothers and sisters, during the khutbah today, I'm going to talk about an aspect of the Quran to try to attempt to strengthen our relationship with the Quran. When we look at the Muslim world, brothers and sisters, there's one thing that is in common between many of the countries in the Muslim world, which is that if you want a job, you have to know somebody, right? If you want a job, you have to know someone. Or if you want, Jazakallah khair, shukran. Or if you want something done, like a paperwork or something to do with the government, then you also need to know someone. Right? In the day of judgment, you will not have this option. Right? You will not have this option. That's why the Prophet ﷺ said, اقرأوا القرآن فإنه يأتي شفيعا يوم القيامة. That recite the Quran. This Quran will come in the day of judgment and intercede for you. This is what you need, right? And this is something you can make, you can work on yourself. If you have a strong relationship with the Quran, then it is likely that it will come and intercede on your behalf in the day of judgment. On the other hand, if you don't have any relationship with the Quran, then it is as if you went to somebody for help and he said, I don't know you, right? I don't know you, that means I'm not going to help you, right? So the aspect I'm going to talk about today is how to review the Quran. A lot of people complain that I memorize a surah and by the time I finish the surah, I forgot the beginning of the surah, right? And one thing that a lot of people don't know, that when Ramadan comes, and by the way, Ramadan is 4.5 months away, right? Big surprise. 4.5 months away. Allahumma ballighna Ramadan. May Allah deliver us to Ramadan. When Ramadan comes, when we bring somebody to lead Salatul Taraweeh, this person has to review. And most likely, he had to review the whole year. So, meaning that if you give this person a 2 weeks notice, then it is unfair. And this happens quite a bit. If somebody local is doing it, we'll give him 2 weeks notice because we are stuck. But the reality is that a person who knows that he's going to lead Taraweeh when Ramadan comes, he has to prepare the whole year. It's a whole year of reviewing the Quran. If he doesn't, he will have a lot of difficulty. And after reviewing for a whole year, every day during Ramadan, he has to review that part that he's going to recite that night. It's a lot of reviewing involved. And believe it or not, when you step into this mihrab, I tell people, and this is a reality, if you haven't tried before, try it one day. It is possible that you will mess up the Fatiha. You will not remember Surah Al-Fatiha. Is it possible? It is possible. And I tell people, you could even forget your name because you are under pressure and people have expectations. You don't want to make mistakes. You want to recite it beautifully, right? You want to meet the expectation. And it is a responsibility. You want to be up to the task. All of this, including the heat when you step inside, right? During Ramadan, you are inside this box, you are sweating. All of this contribute in making you stressed out. And as a result, you will forget the basic ayat that you read every day, that you never make mistakes when you read them at home. Right? Now, if I ask you a question, what is more difficult? Memorizing the Quran? It doesn't necessarily has to be the whole Quran. Let's say part of the Quran or surah. What is more difficult? Memorizing something or reviewing and making sure that you don't forget that thing? What is more difficult? Memorizing? Reviewing? Why? Anybody wants to answer the question? Yes, Akhi. Yes, Akhi. Jazakallah khair. That's the answer I was looking for. That's the, inshallah, the correct answer. Is that, as you all know, some people memorize the Quran within a year, within 2 years, within 5 years, within 10 years. But reviewing the Quran takes a lifetime. You're going to have to review it the rest of your life. Unless you were 80 years old, you memorized the Quran and 5 years later you died. That's different. But otherwise, reviewing is a lifetime. If you stop reviewing, it's very difficult to go back. Right? It's probably more difficult than memorizing it. If you forgot most of it, it's very difficult to go back. And if you memorize it wrong, then also it is very difficult to go back. So today, this is an attempt to give you a method, a practical method to review whatever Quran you know, or whatever Quran, whatever amount you are planning to memorize, right? Whether you know it today or you're planning to memorize it, this method will help you maintain what you memorize. It is normal for a human being to forget. As they say, if you don't use it, you lose it. Whether it is a skill or a language or the Quran or anything else. You have to use it on a daily basis. Of course, I mean, if you are not an imam, you are not leading people in salah every day, you may not be motivated to review what you memorized. That's why I'm giving you this method that will help you review this Quran. And this method, it is a practical method. You use it every day. You use it in every salah. Did the people of the past need a method like this? Most likely not. These people, their memory is different than our memory today. We cannot even concentrate. We were talking about it a couple of days ago with some brothers. The YouTube videos used to be very long. Today, a 10-minute video, people will definitely skip that video. It's too long. 10 minutes. Now, a 2-minute video is still long. We don't have the patience. So most videos today are shorter than 2 minutes. We cannot concentrate. Our memory is getting weaker and weaker because we are not using it very much. People in the past used to memorize the Quran first so that they prepare their memory to receive a lot of other information, the ahadith and so on. Right? That was like a step one, basically. So when I memorize the Quran, I have to repeat. If you don't repeat enough times, then you won't be able to. There's no miracle. If you don't repeat it enough times, you won't be able to memorize it. So you have to repeat it so many times. Everybody knows this. After you finish memorizing it, you have to have a plan to review it. If you don't have a plan to review what you just memorized, that you are able to recite a surah now without looking at the Mus'haf, you think you got it. But soon enough, you will lose it if you don't have a plan. And the plan now is to use it on a daily basis. What do we do when we go and pray Salat at home? For many of us, and I don't want to say most of us, we read like a short surah. We want to go, وَالْعَصْرِ إِنَّ الْإِنسَانَ لَفِي خُسْرٍ إِلَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالْحَقِّ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالصَّبْرِ. Allahu Akbar. And second rak'ah, we read قُلْ هُوَ اللَّهُ أَحَدٌ. Right? Those are some of the short surahs. Right? You could even read an ayah that's shorter than that. This is what we do. So, instead of reading these surahs, because it is likely that you will never forget these surahs because you read them so much, right? Instead of reading these surahs, you start reviewing the ones that you memorized before, right? Let's give an example. We give an example of somebody who memorized, let's say, 10 surahs, whether they are short or long, whether they are consecutive surahs or separated. It doesn't matter. So I have 10 surahs. So today in Salatul Dhuhr, for example, I will recite the first page of the first surah. In the second rak'ah, I will recite the second page of that surah. And so on, until I get to the end of these 10 surahs. I may decide to recite less. Let's say, I'm always in a rush, so instead of doing one page every rak'ah, I will do half a page, right? Half a page is a little bit longer than reading Surah Al-Asr and Qul Huwallahu Ahad, just a little bit longer. So it's half a page. You can set the amount, make it a fixed amount, set the amount. Once you reach the end, the Surah number 10, you go back to the beginning. Let's say today, Fajr time, I read the last page of Surah number 10. So in Dhuhr, I will start again from the first page of Surah number 1, the first Surah that I memorize. And so on. And you do this continuously. Is this a sunnah? Is it a sunnah? This is not a sunnah. It has nothing to do with the sunnah. This is just a method for you to review the Quran. Right? It's just something to review the Quran. So by doing this, you will find that it will become easier and easier for you to recite the surah without having to look at the Mus'haf. Because at the beginning, what would happen is that this surah number 1 from the 10 that you memorize, you haven't reviewed it for the longest time, so you will find a lot of difficulty even reciting one sentence from the first page in your first rak'ah, right? So you will have to pick up the Mus'haf before you make the salah, whether it is a sunnah, you are praying the sunnah, or you're praying Tahiyat al-Masjid, or you're praying al-Faridah, you're praying by yourself, you're praying with the Imam. You can do the same thing. Pick up the Mus'haf, you look at it, you read it, you read the portion that you're going to use, that you're going to recite in this salah. If it is a page, then I read this page. I try to remember it. I do my best. And then I'll go and pray. If I'm not able to finish that page, it's fine. I'll do my best, because it will become easier and easier with time. It takes months and even in some cases years to review and keep it up. So after the salah, after I finished, I go back and read this page again and look at the mistakes that I did, or where did I get stuck, so that next time after I finish the 10 and go back, it becomes easier. Does it make sense? This program is independent from any other program. That means if you have another program for example, you are planning to memorize the Quran or to memorize a new surah or anything else, then these two are completely separated and completely independent. You can have a different program for memorizing that has nothing to do with this, right? This has to continue as it is. If you happen to memorize a new surah, a fresh one, you can add it with these 10, so you will have now 11 surahs, right? Any questions so far? No questions? Does it make sense?
It makes sense for the number 10 surahs. What if you get like 2 juz or 3 juz now?
All right. If a person, let's say, memorizes a lot of Quran, let's say a person memorizes the whole Quran, right? This is the most you can do for the Quran, the whole Quran, right? So if he reads just half a page a day, it's going to take a long time for him to get to the end, which may defy the purpose, right? If it takes a very long time, then it may defy the purpose. From the young people who are here, how many ayah are in the Quran? From the young ones?
6,666 ayah.
Jazakallah khair. I refer to the young ones, but alhamdulillah, you are young enough. Anybody else from the young ones? Younger ones? Younger than their brother? All right. Yes. No, that's a good try, but that's too big of a number. How many pages roughly? How many pages we have in the Quran? Yes. Any young ones? Yes, akhi. Say again. Jazakallah khair. That's very close to the correct answer. He said 700, so it's very close. We have about 600 pages. 600 pages. So you can imagine if and the number of ayat 6,636.
66.
This number that you said is the other opinion, because there is a difference of opinion on how many ayat are in the Quran. Why would there be a difference of opinion when it comes to the number of ayat in the Quran? How can we have a difference of opinion in the number of ayat in the Quran? Somebody who is close by? Yes, akhi? The size? Okay. All right. All right, Jazakallah khair. One of the reasons, as the brother mentioned, is whether you consider the basmala an ayah of the Quran or not. And some ayat are, instead of having a long ayah, they are considered 2 ayat, and so on. So there is a difference of opinion in terms of the number of ayat. The two answers are 6,000. This is an easy number to remember because it's all sixes, right? The other number is 6,636. Is it important for us to know the number of ayat? How many ayat are in Surah Al-Baqarah? From the young ones. Let's hear the young ones. The young ones. Yes, akhi? Jazakallah khair. That's the correct answer. Now, is there somebody here similar to the people we see on YouTube where you tell him an ayah, they will tell you a number? The ayah number? Do we have somebody like this here? I'm just asking, I don't know. The ayah that I want a number of is in Surah Al-Baqarah. And the ayah is, yes, akhi? That's correct. That's the number the brother said. Yes, that is correct. Jazakallah khair. So the total number of ayat in Surah Al-Baqarah, 286. So the ayah that I want maybe somebody here knows the number of the ayah without having to Google it. وَكَذَلِكَ جَعَلْنَاكُمْ أُمَّةً وَسَطًا وَكَذَلِكَ جَعَلْنَاكُمْ أُمَّةً وَسَطًا. This is in Surah Al-Baqarah. Anybody knows the number of this ayah? Yes, Akhi. Jazakallah khair. How did you know the answer? Did you hear this before? Or this is your deduction? You heard it before. All right. That's good enough. Jazakallah khair. That's the correct answer. The ayah number is 286 divided by 2. Because this ayah talks about being a middle nation. And the middle, this ayah happened to be in the middle of Surah Al-Baqarah, which is 286 divided by 2. Is it important for us to know these numbers? At the Day of Judgment, are we going to be asked like how many ayat are in the... No. But what it does is that it shows that you have a relationship with the Quran. Right? If I follow the NBA and I like a particular player, I would know a lot of information that really don't benefit me in any way, right? Like nonsense. When he was born, what teams he played for, and how much money they paid to transfer him. We know a lot of things like this. But when it comes to the Quran, we may not know as much, right? We may not know as much. And that's why this type of information, even though it's not important to the for the Muslim, for him to make him enter paradise or anything, but it shows that we have some types of relationship with the Quran. This method, going back to the method that we used to review the Quran with, I personally tried it, I used it, and I had other people use it. And a brother from New York sent me an email, a brother that I don't even know, and he said that himself, he memorizes the Quran, and a group of his friends who memorize the Quran and lead Salatul Taraweeh. He said now, during Taraweeh, we don't have to open the Mus'haf. And this comment, I was telling the same comment to one of the brothers. I told him the exact same comment, is that this is a feeling I had, and this is the feeling he had, even though we don't even know each other. Right? Meaning that during Salatul Taraweeh, you have so much to recite, right? You are leading Salatul Taraweeh, you have so much to recite. Once in a while, you need to open the Mus'haf to look at what's next, right? What ayah comes next, what page comes next, right? So if you have reviewed if you have a good method of reviewing, then it becomes easier, right? What else can we say about reviewing? Did anybody had issues when memorizing the Quran? Anybody had issues? Yes. With this method, when you try it, one thing will become apparent is that it will give a new meaning, as I mentioned today, the khutbah, a new meaning to the salat you are praying. The Prophet ﷺ, he did certain things differently every time. A different dua, right? A different dhikr, for instance. And what this does is that it will help the person concentrate better. If I'm always reciting walas, I'm not even thinking about what I'm reciting. It just comes out. I didn't make any mistakes, but I don't even know what I recited. But if today I stand up, I recite Al-Fatiha, and I'm thinking, what am I supposed to read right now? I'm not going to read Surah Al-Asr. I am in the second page of the third surah I memorize. And this is how it starts. And then you recite it. And you are concentrating now because you're trying to remember the ayat, right? You're trying to remember those ayat and maybe, hopefully, reflect on what you are reading a little bit more. So it will give you a little bit of concentration. A lot of people complain about not being concentrated enough during the salat, right? we finished the salat. Like a brother was telling me that he used to wake up for Fajr. He used to wake up for Fajr. And he was doing a pretty good job. He always used to wake up for Fajr, even when he's really tired. And he said, I woke up for Fajr, I went and made wudu, I went to the living room and I started praying. When I got to the tashahhud, I fell asleep. He fell asleep during the tashahhud. And then he woke up, he said, what am I doing here? And then obviously he went back and he made wudu again and he started to pray again. When he got to the tashahhud, he slept again. Right? It seems like for a long time he was so tired. And then this kept happening for so many times until he got it. Right? He made the salam. But obviously, similarly, when you are reciting something that you recite all the time, you finish the salat, you don't even know what you did. Like you don't know. You can guess that you probably recited Surah Al-Asr, just a guess, because that's what you usually do. And I remember this sheikh I prayed behind in Salat al-Tarawih in Ramadan many years ago. He was reciting one of the surah from the few last juz of the Quran. And during the salah, while he was reciting, somebody corrected him. And this happens quite often. It's actually an issue. During Ramadan, it's an issue. Everyone wants to correct the imam. Right? So especially when you get to the shorter surahs. Right? Either Surah Al-Baqarah at the beginning or towards the end. Or Surah Al-Kahf, the like popular surahs in the middle. So this sheikh, subhanallah, he was corrected. A brother corrected him from the back. So as an imam, you have to make a decision, right? You listen and then make a decision. Either you are right, you continue, or you found that, oh, he's right, so I'm going to go back and fix it. The imam continued. He didn't listen to what this brother said. So this brother said it again. He insisted. And then 2 or 3 other brothers said the same thing. You can imagine, now it's more than one. The imam continued. This brother insisted the 3rd time. And this time, there was like 5 or 6 or 7 brothers saying the same thing. And the imam continued. So later on that night, I asked him, I told him, Sheikh, what happened? Did you actually make a mistake? He said, no. He said, these surahs, I would recite them even if I'm sleeping. Like he knows them so well that he could recite them even while sleeping. He said, I was about to turn to them and tell them you are all wrong. This is the confidence. And this is to show how well he memorizes this. He said, I was about to turn and say, all of you are wrong. And this is because sometimes, if you say something and somebody else says the same thing, you think you are right. Because so many people said it, it will give more value to what you are saying. But, we see it, we read it all the time in the Quran. Most people are wrong. Right? We read it. وَلَكِنَّ أَكْثَرَ النَّاسِ. You read it all the time in the Quran. That if you follow the majority, they will lead you astray. Which means that most people are always wrong. And the people who are right are fewer all the time. It's unlike in the elections where the bigger number wins. Right? That's all I have to say, brothers and sisters. Hopefully, I'm hoping that if you put this, it's a little something. It's not much. But if you put it into practice, you won't see results instantly. But this is a project. You have to work on it, and every week you will get better. Every month you will get better. Every year you will get better. Right? For a person who memorizes the Quran, I don't know if I finished that idea, you have to make it so that you finish it within a month-ish, hopefully. That's probably like a good standard. If you finish it sooner, alhamdulillah, right? But if you keep it too long, let's say if it takes a year for you to review, what you memorize, whether it is the whole Quran or a few surahs, then it will not have a great benefit, right? If you read it once in a while. But if you're doing it daily, right, and try to finish it within a month, or if you don't know as much, try to finish it within a week, right? If you're comfortable reading, let's say, half a page, I'm sure most people will be able to read half a page, because as I said, it's a little more than reciting Surah Al-Asr twice, right? It's a little more. So if you are comfortable reciting half a page and you are able to finish within a week, that means you are able later on to increase your memorization, right? You are able to maybe add another surah or review something that you memorized maybe when you were small and you forgot it, or you memorize a surah that you heard so often, right? Or a surah that you like, and preferably you don't memorize anything until you know that you are reciting it properly with proper tajweed and all that. You don't want to memorize it wrong. I tell people, don't be in a rush to memorize, because fixing something that you memorize, if it is a computer, you would just format it, right? You do reset, restore. There are many other options, but you cannot delete something from your brain. If you memorize it wrong, it's very, very difficult to fix. It will stay with you probably your whole life. You will struggle with it your whole life. هذا والله تعالى أعلم وصلى الله على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. If you have any questions, please go ahead. If not, we'll conclude here. Yes, أخي محمد.
Spoke about what's the best way to correct the imam on تفتح على الإمام لأن في السبع people rush to even the sheikh with a small sign. People open up even the ayah and so on. It makes confusion.
Yeah. Jazakallah khair. We, alhamdulillah, when I prayed with Sheikh Yasser Abu Ammar many years, and I liked his method. This is one of your local imams. And his method was that if I'm praying, he's behind me, and he's speaking, he's correcting me just enough for me to hear, right? Because you don't want to distract other people. Like, somebody sitting at the back, and this happened to us, myself and Sheikh Yasser. He was at the back with the mushaf and screaming from the back. And he thinks like he's doing something good. This is not good. If you want to correct, you have to be at the front. If you want to correct, you have to know the Quran. You have to know the whole Quran, or at least be familiar with the whole Quran. You have to know the tajweed. You have to know the qira'at, right? You have to know a lot of things before you start correcting the imam. I'm always puzzled why a person would correct the imam. Yes?
They feel good about themselves.
Well, yeah, maybe they want to, I don't want to say show off, to say that I know it, or maybe I'm reading it on my iPhone. Does it answer the question, Akhi Muhammad? Yes. Correct the question, or correct me.
What's the problem where the imam is asking for someone to remind him he forgot?
Let's say the imam is stuck.
Yes. How do you get the sign? What's the problem?
So he's stuck and they are not telling him what the answer is.
What's the sign as the imam? What would you do? Or what's the...
Okay, I will tell you something that actually happened. This is something that actually happened, and it's very rare that you see it. It's very rare. I haven't seen it before or after. We prayed at the Islamic Center in Vancouver many years ago, and there was this sheikh who was visiting, a Saudi sheikh who was visiting, and this guy, subhanallah, he memorized, not only that he memorized the Quran, he memorized Sahih al-Bukhari and Sahih Muslim. His memory was like, I haven't seen too many people with a memory so sharp, mashallah. And during the whole Ramadan, except that day, he never made any mistakes. His memory is sharp. I don't know how else to describe it. That day, we invited him for food, and it seemed like he like overate. And I think the food was so good that he overate. And when he came for Taraweeh, he got stuck. And people, the brother behind him who was assigned to correct him, he was not speaking loud enough. So he couldn't continue. And he told him the ayah so many times, he couldn't continue. So he had to communicate to him that I can't hear you. Like, how would you say to somebody behind you that I can't hear you? We are praying. Of course, you cannot use like street language, I was going to say. So you have to communicate with him using the Quran. So he told him, وَلَا تَجْهَرْ بِصَلَاتِكَ وَلَا تُخَافِتْ بِهَا وَابْتَغِ بَيْنَ ذَلِكَ سَبِيلًا. This is the very end of Surah Al-Isra, right? Correct me if I'm wrong. وَلَا تَجْهَرْ بِهَا وَابْتَغِ بَيْنَ, to signal to this brother that I can't hear you. Now, if I'm the brother correcting the Imam, I have to understand what he's telling me. This is why people behind the Imam, they have to be knowledgeable, right? They have to be knowledgeable, and this is the Sunnah, that people behind the Imam, because in case something happens, one of them will have to continue the Salah. So the brother, mashallah, at the back, the brother behind him, he knew right away what he meant, and he told him. He raised his voice and he told him how to continue. Does it answer the question now? Yeah? وَلَا تَجْهَرْ بِصَلَاتِكَ. I don't want to translate it instantly, but inshallah look it up at the end of Surah Yusuf. It's the end of Surah Al-Isra. Al-Isra, yeah. It's basically saying that you shouldn't be too loud or too soft, right? And this is the message that you want. And you can also communicate to the people behind you other things. For example, if the Imam made a mistake and we say Subhanallah, but he doesn't have a clue what you're talking about. What is the mistake? Like, I don't know what the mistake is, right? You have to somehow tell me what the mistake is. And if you are using the Quran, then it doesn't invalidate the Salah, because you don't want to invalidate the Salah. You want to be able to fix it. I'm hoping I answered that question. Anybody has another question? Allah yabarak fik. Anybody? Yes, Akhi.
You talked about the methodology for reviewing. What about a good way to memorize the Quran?
A good way to memorize the Quran, before, as I said, I cannot emphasize enough that before you memorize anything, make sure your tajweed and pronunciations are correct. You don't want to be fixing what you memorized. And I know personally, many people who memorize the Quran, and then they had to redo the whole thing. You can imagine. And you can tell by listening to these people that they still have mistakes until today. The mistake, they come up once in a while, because it's an old mistake. In case you have a question, let me know, but I will tell you a story in the meantime. And we'll conclude with this if there are no questions, inshallah. Our Imam in Victoria, Sheikh Ismail, when he went to Islamic University in Medina, before he got admitted, he was about to be tested in the Quran. They told him, you memorized the whole Quran? He said, yes. Okay, you're going to have a test to see if you actually memorize the Quran. Right? So that day, the Sheikh, the scholar who was going to test him, he sent a message saying that I don't have time today except like 10 minutes. I'm going to give you a test like within 10 minutes. So get ready, I'm coming. So the Sheikh, what would you do in 10 minutes? Right? Like what would you prepare for in 10 minutes? Are you going to recite the Fatiha or recite the Baqarah, the beginning? what would you do? He said, I'm thinking, what do I do? He said, I just opened the Mus'haf randomly and I read ثمانية أزواج. ثمانية أزواج is an ayah, the beginning of an ayah in Surah Al-An'am. You can read it. ثمانية أزواج. And he said he recited that ayah or a couple pages from there. And then a few minutes later, the Shaykh came. He said, do you memorize the Quran? He said, yes. He said, okay, recite from ثمانية أزواج. This is incredible. And this is a local Shaykh. And he will tell you this story. He told him to recite from that particular page. And this page in Surah Al-An'am, it's not at the beginning, it's not at the end, it's not exactly in the middle, it's somewhere, But Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. جزاكم الله خير. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك.